Hello student, today I will discuss some example based on signal flow graph. Basically, I will discuss how we will identify the input node, output node, forward path, feedback path and non-touching loop. And how we will determine the loop gain of the feedback loop and path gain of the forward path. Okay, so let's start our discussion. Okay, so regarding this, I have given this system, means this signal flow graph. Okay, so from this signal flow graph, we have seen there is only one input node or source that have only the outgoing branches. Okay, so what is that input node? That input node is x1 node. Okay, and in this graph there is only one output node or sink which have only the incoming branches, and that node is x4 node. Okay, now we will find the path. Okay, so what is path? Path is a continuous unidirectional succession of branches along which no node is passed more than once. Okay, that means first path is this one. Okay, this is highlighted by blue line from x1 to x2 to x3 to x4. This is one path. Okay, and this is another path from x1 to x2 to x4. Okay, and these two paths are forward path. So what is forward path? Forward path is a path from the input node to the output node, and that is one path is x1 to x2 to x3 to x4, and another path is x1 to x2 to x4. These two are forward path. Now we'll see what is feedback path. Okay, so feedback path or feedback loop is a path which originate and terminates on the same node, that is this highlighted path. Okay, that is x2 to x3 and back to x2 again. So this is a feedback path. Okay, now come to the self loop. Okay, so what is self loop? Self loop is a feedback loop consisting of a single branch, that is A33 is a self loop. Okay, clear? Now the gain, what is gain? The gain of a branch is the transmission function of that branch. Okay, so the path gain is the product of branch gain encountered in traversing a path, that is the gain of forward path. That is our first forward path is this highlighted portion, this red highlighted portion, which is x1 to x2 to x3 to x4. So the path gain is A21, A32 and A43, and our second forward path is, which is not indicated in this slide. So our second forward path is x1 to x2 to x4. So the path gain is of the second forward path is A21 into A42. Okay, now loop gain. Okay, so loop gain is the product of the branch gain of the loop, that is the loop gain of the feedback loop. So here the loop is highlighted by red portion. So loop is x2 to x3 and back to again x2. So what is the loop gain? Loop gain is A32 into A23. Okay, and there is another loop, that means self loop is here, which is not indicated by in this slide means the gain of the self loop is not indicated here. So the gain of the self loop is A33. Okay. Next, non-touching loop. Okay, so here there are only two loops, and these two loops are touching. Okay, they touch each other. Okay, so there is no non-touching loop in this example. Okay, now come to the second example. Okay, so this is our problem. This is our signal flow graph. From this signal flow graph, we will identify the input node, output node, forward path, feedback path, and determine the loop gain of the feedback loop and the path gain of the forward path and the non-touching loop. So let's see what are these. So first is input node. So input node is this RS and CS. Okay, these two, RS is input node and CS is output node. Okay, so next we will find the forward path. So there are two forward path. Okay, so first one is this this from RS to CS. So the path gain is G1 into G2 into G3 into G4 into G5 into G7. And the second forward path is this, which is highlighted by blue, and the path gain is G1 into G2 into G3 into G4 into G6 into G7. Okay, and now we will identify the loop. So how many loop are there? There are 4 loop. Let's see the loop. The first loop is this. Okay, so what is the loop gain? Loop gain is G2 into H1. Okay, next second loop is this, and the loop gain is G4 into H2. Then third loop is this. So what is the loop gain? G4 into G5 into H3. Okay, and fourth loop is this. Okay, and the loop gain is G4 into G6 into H3. Okay, and non-touching loop. So here so how many non-touching loop are there? Okay, so first loop, this means G2 and H1. And this loop is non-touching with this loop, G4 into H2. Again the first loop is non-touching with this third loop means G4 into G5 into H3. Okay, and third non-touching loop is loop 1 and loop 4. Okay, so loop 1 is G2 into H2, G2 into H1, and fourth one is G4 into G6 into H3. So there are 3 non-touching loop. Let me clear. So you people have understood what is input node, output node, forward path, feedback path, and the loop gain and forward path gain and the non-touching loop. Okay, so now here I will take another example. So from this signal flow graph, we will find the input node, output node, forward path, feedback path, self loop, and the loop gain of the feedback path and the forward path. Okay, so from this in this signal flow graph, there is one input node which have only outgoing branch, and that input node is x1, and there is only output node which have only incoming branch, and that output node is x8. Okay, now we will find the forward path. Okay, so in this signal flow graph, there is one forward path is this, which is highlighted by red. That means x1 to x2 to x3 to x4 to x5 to x6 to x7 to x8. Okay, this is one forward path, and this is another forward path. second forward path. Okay, so which is highlighted by blue, and that forward path is x1 to x2 to x7 to x8. Okay, and this is third forward path. Okay, so the third forward path is x1 to x2 to x4 to x5 to x6 to x7 to x8. Okay, so there are only 3 forward path. Okay, now we will identify the feedback path. Okay, so let's see how many feedback path or loop are there. Okay, so this is our first loop or first feedback path, that is x2 to x3 and back to again x2. Okay, this is first loop. This is second loop. The loop start x3 to x4 to x3. This is third loop. So third loop start from x4 to x5 and back to again x4. This is fourth loop, and this loop start with x5 to x6 and again back to x5. And this is fifth loop, and this loop start from x6 to x7 and again back to x6. And this is sixth loop or self loop. This is start from x7 and end to x7. So this is called self loop. Okay, so this is our seventh loop. Okay, so this loop start from x2 to x4 to x3 and back to again x2. This is seventh loop. Okay, and this is eighth loop, and this eighth loop start from x5 to x5 to x6 to x7 to again back to x5. And this is our eighth loop. So eighth loop start from x2 and go to x7. Okay, and then x7 to x5, then x5 to x4, and then x4 to x3 to again back to x2. Okay, this is ninth loop, and this is our 10th loop. Okay, so 10th loop start from x2 x2 to x7 to x6 to x5 to x4 to x3 and back to x2. Okay, and I have already mentioned this self loop. So self loop is this x7 to x self loop start from x7 and terminate at x7. Okay, so how many loop are there in this signal flow graph? There are 10th loop. See the loop, there are 10th loop. So here mention the loop gain of this 10th loop. Okay, so first loop, the loop gain of the first loop is A3 to A23. Second loop is A43 to A34. Third loop is A54 to A45. Fourth loop is A65 into A56. Fifth loop is A76 to A67. And sixth loop is A65 into A76 into A57. And sixth loop is self loop, and this the loop gain is A77. Then seventh loop is this is our 8th loop. 8th loop is the loop gain is A42 into A34 into A23, and the loop gain of the 9th loop is A72 into A57 into A45 into A34 into A23, and the 10th loop, the last loop, the loop gain is A72 into A67 into A56 into A45 into A34 into A23. So here mention the loop gain of our 10th loop. Okay, and here I have mentioned the path gain of the forward path. So we have already seen in this signal flow graph there are 3 forward path. Okay, so first forward path, the loop gain of the first forward path is A32 into A43 into A54 into A65 into A76. Okay, then third and then second forward path, the second forward path gain is A72. See here only one transmittance A72, and the third forward path gain is A42 into A54 into A65 into A76. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you. This is clear to you how we will find the input node, output node, forward path, feedback path, and how we will determine the forward path gain and the loop gain, non-touching loop. Okay, so today I will stop here. Okay, so thank you.